let me share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Once again, thanks for joining this Azure Power Lunch session. We're going to talk about how we can use Azure Service Fabric and containers to lift, shift, and modernize apps. So quickly, if you don't know me, or this is the first time joining this session, I'm an Azure Solution Architect working with Microsoft, and this is kind of a quick summary of my career. I've been in this software industry for around 23 years now, with Microsoft for almost 14. So, okay, so as usual, we're going to start with quick Azure service updates. So I'm just going to open my browser, and some of the updates that I'm going to want to share with you are backup for Azure file shares. So if you don't know, Azure file shares are an abstraction built on top of Azure storage. They're an SMB 2.1/3.0 file shares. You can access those shares from machines running in Azure or on-prem. On-prem machine have to support SMB 3.0. So there was a big ask that we need to have enterprise capability. We need to be able to back up these file shares some way, or for if let's say if we lose that or if we make changes, things like that. So now that capability is currently in public preview. So this is so the way it will be available when you go into your service site recovery archive or site recovery vault or recovery services vault, you will see an option virtual machine where you see another option Azure file share. So there would be virtual machine, SQL Server, and Azure VM, and then you will see Azure file share. So that you can select and back it up. For more details, please go to Azure Service Updates. Just search on your favorite search engine, Azure Updates or Azure Service Update, and you should see that. Okay. So if you wanna use Docker containers with Azure Service App Service, and you can definitely do that, and you're not ready to start a Azure account or something like that, you can play with it. And this option, try Azure App Service, now give you a quick capability where you can go in and pick up some of these containers directly from here, or show your custom image and use that. So this is kind of a make it very easy. You will get 30-minute access to to deploy your application and to test out. Okay. Any questions? Okay. By the way, if you are not kind of have a question, please, if you don't mind, can you mute your phones? That'd be great. Thank you. Finally, there was another request from our customers that there should be a way to look at TCP connection in an app service running in Azure. And now there are diagnostic capabilities that are available, which with which you can find out how many TCP connections are currently there for your app. And sometimes there are runaway TCP connections which are leaking, and then you hit that limit of the maximum TCP connection, and then app service start throttling, and that can cause certain problems. With these diagnostics, you can find out what's going on, and you can fix that issue and remedy that situation. Okay. So with that, let's quickly go back to our presentation and with our topic of discussion, which is Service Fabric containers lift, shift, and modernize our application. So why we want to modernize? These are some of the key kind of things that you want to use your you want to modernize your application for agility, for quickly deliver value to your customer, to reduce your total cost of ownership, and overall simplifying the whole process. So I think I mean everyone is aware of that. That's why you want to modernize your application. I want to spend a few minutes on the cloud maturity model. So as we start, customers have existing apps on-prem, and then what we want to do is we want to take those into the cloud, just do a simple lift and shift, just to make sure that we have those applications running in the cloud where we don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure, and we make uh, move maybe the customer is moving to the OpEx model, or as other applications moving into the cloud, they want to move that application to the cloud as well, because for closer proximity for other application to access. And then you want to do cloud optimization, where you further break down your application for better density and things like that. And finally, you do modernization. In most cases, you follow step-by-step process. In rare cases, you take an application and do full
Ryan,
modernization.
not Brian. Ryan.
Hi.
Can I bore you for a moment?
If you don't mind, if you can, if somebody can mute
Yes,
their phone.
did that.
Thank you. So normally you will be going through these steps to kind of modernize your apps, and rarely you may have an app where you go from directly an on-prem app into a modern app running in the cloud. Okay, so the first one is where you do lift and shift, and mostly when you do lift and shift, you do no re-architecture. Basically, the application is running on-prem um, you know, on servers on-prem, and then you move it into the cloud, taking into account virtual machine, using virtual machine. In this case, basically it's a one-to-one correspondence. There is no re-architecture of code. The goal is to move these application into the cloud with the least effort. They do provide some value, but that value is minimal. You are still ending up responsible for being updating and patching of the underlying infrastructure, and there is a limited or no ability to auto scale and to provide high availability for the app. Let's go towards the cloud optimize, and that's where Service Fabric and other container orchestration and orchestrator play a big role. Once again, there is very little to no architecture of code required. Basically, what you're doing is you're just using making some changes to the configuration. It allows you to, since you're using containers, and if you don't know about containers, I will go over containers in a second. The thing is, containers are virtualizing at the OS level, where VMs virtualize at the hardware level. So they're quicker to start up, and you can pack more containers. This is since they have lower density, smaller size, you can pack up more containers on a machine than virtual machines. So that's the value of it. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to increase, the density of, basically you are able to run more application on a server. It gives you enhanced capability in terms of DevOps, because a container is a self-contained package for an application. It's basically a packaging standard, but it has other advantages as well. So it has all the dependency packed with it So you can take, let's say, a legacy application that you don't want to make any changes to it, put it in a container, deploy it outside in the cloud. And finally, there are orchestrators available in the form of Azure Kubernetes and Azure Service Fabric, which allows you to um, move these containers around in a way to provide high availability and fault tolerance. That's the key thing. And just to keep in mind, this is not the end game. This is basically one step towards modernization. So just a quick thing about VMs. As you can see, uh, with virtual machine, you have a hypervisor which sits on the host OS, and that provides you this virtualization at the hardware level to create those guest OS. In the container world, this hypervisor is replaced by the container engine, which is basically Docker, and it provides you the ability to run containers on top of it. And since containers are um, um, kind of a more compact, you can fit more containers on a host OS than you can fit VMs. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So there are different ways to deploy containers in Azure, and I think we have talked about a few of them, like ACI, which is Azure Container Instances, in a previous talk, and Azure Managed Kubernetes, which is a service that's where we are providing all the management node, and you are just are responsible for your application and running the nodes in the cloud. You can run containers as a part of web applications, Azure App Service, Batch Service, Azure Batch also allow you to run containers, and of course, Service Fabric. So for the people, I just want to provide a quick refresher of what Service Fabric is, and then move forward. So a quick intro. So basically, on the left-hand side, if you are building a PaaS platform for your application, these are the things that you need. You need ability to do rolling upgrades, and ability to scale out your application, ability to have both stateless and stateful workload, and if ability to deploy and ability to version your application. And if you want to do that, let's say the open source level, that's the tooling that you need. And by the way, this is not kind of a shot at any of the open source technology. They are very popular, especially Kubernetes. I mean, it's very popular. It's used by a number of customers around the world, and especially it is gaining a lot of popularity with AKS on Azure. Just remember that both Service Fabric and AKS, they are tools at your disposal to address your business problems, which you can solve through this technology. So you can use one or the other. I have organizations which are using both of these frameworks or tools. So Service Fabric, basically, it provides you all these capability. It is available, you can run it on-prem, you can run it in other clouds. I think that is available as a preview. You can run it on Azure Stack in your own data center, and of course, you can run it in Azure. And these are some of the few capabilities. There is full end-to-end tooling available with which you can deploy and to Service Fabric. One thing I want to mention, that Microsoft Azure is running on Service Fabric. This is the core service that we were running as a part of our fabric to host services like Azure SQL DB, Cosmos DB, IoT Hub, Dynamics 365, and Power BI. So it is a battle-tested framework that has been running in our data center for quite some time. Actually, 30% of the Azure core are running Service Fabric because they are supporting our own infrastructure. So it's a battle-tested um, uh, battle-tested service that we are now providing for our customer to use. So this is some information about it. There are millions of services that are running, and there are upgrade happen with this one. We are able to upgrade services on a regular basis without kind of bringing down the whole service. So that allows us to do rolling upgrades and detect failures and handle those failures and all. Okay. So, but not only Service Fabric is an orchestrator of your services, it also supports container and container orchestration. So you can create services, what we call native services in Azure, in Service Fabric, where you can create those services that takes advantage of Service Fabric's programming model, like durable collection, those collections which can span across nodes and all that. But also you can host executable and containers in Azure Service Fabric. So with that, just like you're hosting applications, you are hosting now containers. So let's say if you have a legacy application, um, you can take advantage of Visual Studio tooling that is available as a part of Service Fabric and add on to the Service Fabric SDK and Visual Studio that's currently in public preview. You can take that and you can, and I will show it to you in a second, you can convert that particular um, application. You can containerize it, it helps you containerize, and then you can deploy this application into Service Fabric. And at that point, Service Fabric will be responsible for managing those containers. It provides an IP per container and all the kind of a useful things that you need as a part of a container orchestrator. And let's say if same thing, if a node is not functioning, it will, and it's, let's say there's a hardware failure with the node, a node is down, it will move the it will, what will do is it will move the uh, containers that are running to other nodes. So let's say this node is gone, it will notice it. Okay, that application was supposed to run on two instances, so one instance is gone, so it will spawn that container on another box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how easily you can do it as a part of Visual Studio. So far, any questions? Okay. So I have this application. Hopefully everybody can see that. Let me just increase the size of the font a little bit. Okay, I have this application. As you can see, this is a ASP, classic ASP.NET application. It is using ASP Web Forms, not using MFC. It has been, so basically the idea is this is an application that has been written some time ago and that's running, and it is calling a WCF service behind the scene to that service is providing the business logic that this web application is using. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to take this application, kind of do a quick lift and shift and optimize and take it into the cloud. So what you can do is open this application in Visual Studio and then do an add. It will take a second. And then you do Docker support for Azure for Service Fabric. And what it will do is it will update your project and add a Docker file as a part of this WCF and add a Service Fabric application as well. by the way, one thing to clarify, you can deploy containers as a part of Service Fabric as well. So there is a Service Fabric application which just allow you to deploy a container, but that is not kind of a very useful thing to do, you know. So sorry, I think I clicked on the wrong screen. Let me go back here. Um, because one container, I mean, doesn't buy you anything. Normally you deploy a set of containers because they contain either those microservices or different tiers of your application. So here we have already kind of a containerize the WCF. Now we can go ahead and containerize the web application. So once again, I go in add and Docker support for Service Fabric. And what it's going to do is it's going to containerize and add the Docker image for the web file. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to look at what it has done, what it has added. So first of all, let's look at the Docker file. If you are familiar with Docker, this should be kind of for you very easy to understand. But if you're not, don't worry about it. Basically, what this file is doing, it is taking an image from Microsoft repository, which is this core. And by the way, you can use either this image depending on how you have set up your Service Fabric cluster. If it is using Windows Server Core 1709, then you can use this one, or if you are using a LTSC 2016, then you can use this image. So this image comes in, then it basically building a new image on top of it using this particular application. So that's what it is doing. On the other hand, same thing. Let's look at the web application. So we open the Docker file for web application. Here is the Docker file for that. Oops, oh, sorry, I click on the wrong image. So this is same thing. So it is using another Microsoft ASP.NET image, and it is using that to deploy this particular application. I mean, use to build the Docker container. Okay. And if we go in there into the, so it has also created a Service Fabric application, which is that's the application we are going to be deploying. What that application is going to do is it's going to take both of these containers and then deploy those into Azure. So as on a Service Fabric. So this is the application manifest. So right now you can set up your instance count to, right now instance count is set to -1. So there will be one instance per node for each. And then there are different information about, okay, what will be the isolation level of these, containers, and you can set that up if you want. I mean, you can set it to Hyper-V or just leave it the default. So all of these things. And I don't want to oversimplify things. You will have to make some changes to make sure your port mapping is right. And I have a project here where I have made those changes. So this is the one, same project with some updates where you have, I mean, where we have gone in and made some changes. For example, we have said the WCF instant count. So we have kind of made those changes, and we have added the parameter. We have set the instance count to 1. We have set the WCF service URI. Here we have set the default connection for the database. So what we are doing is, instead of using a database on-prem, we are using a SQL Server database in the Azure SQL database in the cloud. So once you have done all that, you can right-click and you can publish, and basically you can provide this information about the container registry and all that, and it will publish this package into your Service Fabric cluster, and that's where you will be able to make changes to it. You can run it and all that. One thing I'm really sorry about, I don't my internet is down, so I am basically using my phone hotspot. So that's why I wasn't able to deploy. I mean, just keep in mind, you have to be patient when deploying this application because these container images are a few gig and it takes some time to push those images into your registry. Okay, so that's why you need a decent broadband connection to, play with it. My broadband connection is down, so I cannot push this image into my Service Fabric container. So this is my Service Fabric container that I'm running. I have deployed one application there, so I just want to give you an idea that this application right now is running. And by the way, this is not a containerized application. I just want to be sure. I just want to show you how it will work very similarly, or it will scale out or update very similarly as if you deploy a containerized app. So this app is running, and it is running right now on 2 instances. If I click on it and say there's an instance count of 2, and what I can do is I can pick that URL up and I can quickly open a browser. Type 81 and let's see what happens. So this is available on 8081. So this app should come up. So this is the home page of the app. So just imagine for a second that this is you have deployed through your container. That's how it's it's going to come up. Any questions so far? I know we have 2 minutes. So let's say that you're gonna go in and you wanna scale your app. So you wanna say that you wanna run it on 4 instances. So you do it, and behind the scene, this orchestrator, and same thing will happen if you have deployed this app through, as a container running in Service Fabric, and that's the good thing. Although although you have built this app through containers, but it will scale the same way as any app running in Service Fabric. So as you can see, while this app is scaling, we can go back there and we can kind of refresh it and run it. And once you are in the Service Fabric framework, you can basically use add services, other services to it to modernize your application. So you can add basically create new services in Service Fabric in addition to these existing 2 services that you have, existing containers that you have, to modernize, to further add value to your application. Or what you can do is you can scale these services independently. So you can scale middle tier. Let's say you want to run more instances of middle tier and less instances of front end. Depending on your load, you can do that scaling. You can do that all through the Service Fabric that allows you to do that. Okay, so just one kind of a couple more, one slide that I want to show you. This is the stage that we end up in. So you have Service Fabric running, and then you are taking advantage of other services that are available as a part of the Azure ecosystem, like functions, like logic apps, app service, and at the same time you are adding services into Service Fabric as well. So at this point you can take your legacy application, first cloud optimize it using Service Fabric, and then modernize it on the same platform to make it to continuously evolve it and continuously and quickly add value to it. So we're right on time. Any questions?
There was a question around VNet support for Service Fabric.
Yeah, so Service Fabric is in a VNet. Right now, if you deploy it from the portal, it will create its own VNet. But you can create a own custom template where you can deploy it into another VNet.
So the template means like a resource manager template?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you can do it. But just keep in mind, you have to open certain ports because we are going to be managing the infrastructure underneath. So there has to be some ports open for Azure infrastructure or Azure, basically Azure system to go in and manage the underlying infrastructure.
Is it possible for you to create a sample template and share it with us?
I think there are templates available. I can,
Or
what I will do is,
share a link? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
share a link. So what I will
Yeah.
do is, if you ping me offline, so there is a link of Azure Power Lunch. If you just
Mm-hmm.
send an email to it, or I can, put my alias here.
Yeah.
1 second. Microsoft.com. Just ping me on this one, and I will forward you to the link. Let me just expand it. Format. Okay, so this is my address. So just ping me on that, and I will be able to, kind of direct you to the link of that.
Awesome. Awesome. And any information on the ports that we need to keep open
Yeah,
and all
that
that
is
stuff?
also. I will send you a link as well on the what
Yeah.
ports you
Yeah.
need to open on the Service
Sure.
Fabric.
Sure.
VNet.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Any other questions, guys?
Is it possible to have a hybrid solution like some machines in my cluster in Service Fabric could be on-premise, and some machines I might want to use the Azure instances? Is such a kind of hybrid solution possible?
Excellent question. Not right now, man.
Okay.
Not right now, but that is I mean, I think at some point that may happen, but not right now. Right now, it's
Okay.
either running. So you can do a VNet to VNet connectivity. So you're maybe a cluster running on-prem and a cluster running in Azure, and
Yeah.
those with the VNets are connected. But right now, you cannot have a distributed cluster.
Okay. So how far is Service Fabric mature in with respect to Linux containers?
So I think the last I heard, they GA'd Linux containers.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Linux containers are GA'd now.
Okay.
So they are
Awesome.
generally available.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Okay,
That's all from me.
thank you. Any other questions, folks? Thank you very much. With that, thanks for joining, and hopefully see everyone next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks, AJ. Thank you, man.